All right, so welcome to the Earth Speaks podcast. My guest here today is Lourdes Gant. So welcome, Lourdes.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure. Well, we're certainly living through one of the greatest upheavals in our lives right now, and so many changes and so many opportunities. So it's great to be here. I'm just going to have a little read here of your official bio, just to give people a real sense of who you are. So Lourdes is Vice President of Sustainable Aquaculture in British Columbia, Canada. And she earned her BSc in accountancy at the Polytechnic University of the Philippines, where she graduated cum laude, and her MBA for middle managers at the Ateneo Graduate School of Business. After graduation, she was employed by one of the big 5 auditing firms in the Far East, where she worked with the external audit team doing compliance audits, planning audit systems, and preparing income tax documents for clients. She has also worked as the Chief Financial Officer in a Canadian construction firm with operations in both North and South America. In 2013, Lourdes became a director and 50% shareholder of Manatee Holdings Limited and is presently being groomed to become the CEO. She's certified by the International Register of Certified Auditors, has earned her certification in Risk Management Assurance from the Institute of Internal Auditors, and is one of the founding leaders of the Institute of Internal Auditors in Canada. Profit and Chatelaine magazines have also recognized Lourdes as one of Canada's top 100 women entrepreneurs in 2012 and 2014. And she was also named the winner of the Silver Stevie Award in the Woman of the Year category in the 14th and 15th Annual International Business Awards. So welcome, Lourdes. It's amazing to have you here.
It's fascinating to hear my bio from my previous life.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, why don't you bring us up to speed as to, how the journey has brought you here and into sustainable aquaculture and the contribution that you feel that your business is making right now.
All right. So my background, as you mentioned, I'm from a poverty-stricken family from the Philippines, where the golden ticket is to study hard and work hard. And so that's how I got into where I am right now. I'm very grateful to be given the opportunity to be in the land of milk and honey. I've been in Canada now for 17 years. It's
Yeah.
a whirlwind, I tell you.
Yeah.
I have always been, I guess, diligent in my studies because, as I mentioned, that is kind of where I can find my opportunity coming from a third world country.
Yeah.
So my background really is as a CPA, certified public accountant, and my experience and work before was as a professional auditor. And then when I immigrated to Canada, I was very big in personal and spiritual development even before I left the Philippines. In fact, my training for mind development is from the Silva Mind Control Program from Jose
Yeah.
Silva.
Okay.
And so coming to Canada, I didn't realize there's a lot more personal development companies. There's only one in the Philippines at that time. And at that time, it was considered to be the work of the devil because it's supposed to not be. We're not supposed to tap into the power of our mind because we're a very religious country. But I've always known that there's something that God has given us that we can be tapped magically. And I was tuned in somewhere, somewhat, even though I didn't have any training yet, that I found my first mentor from the Silva Mind group. And it started from there. So coming to Canada, I found a lot more companies doing this and just continued my journey on. I was even certified as a law of attraction coach and hence began my coaching journey.
Yeah.
But make it a long story short, when I came to Canada, I was still practicing as a payroll officer in the accounting background. I came in 2004, but I met my husband in 2007, who is the founder and president of Manatee Holdings Limited, whose mandate is to create the most environmentally beneficial food production operation on land or sea anywhere in the world. He used to be a commercial fisherman and has been seeing the devastating impact that that industry has been doing to the oceans. And
Yeah.
so he set forth and just make it his mission to be more helpful to the environment. So that's why he started the king clam aquaculture industry in Canada.
Right. Okay. And what do you feel is the most exciting thing right now about your industry? Are you feeling excited about it?
We are very excited about what's happening because I think, like most other industry after the pandemic hit,
Yeah.
that most of the changes that will take years and years and years to come forth has suddenly been given a breakthrough in terms of the momentum that we're getting in the aquaculture industry. There's been a lot of, I guess, hurdles and obstacles in the last decade, but in the last 2 years, it has gained so much momentum from, I guess, what's being birthed literally because of all the challenges that happened from the past. So you're right. When we started this call, you said it's exciting times.
Yeah, well, like may you live in interesting times, as they say. So yeah, well, I just wanted to know too, like your thoughts that if our, humanity's actions are so negatively impacting the ecosystems and oceans and fisheries and our pollinators, what are your thoughts on the kinds of things that hold us back? Why do we persist with these behaviors?
I believe that a lot of people has gotten lost in terms of getting in touch with what's natural.
Yeah.
I was interviewing some people as well, and we've forgotten what nature-based solutions are.
Yeah.
Not that it's mostly our fault, but the environment, literally, not just the natural environment, but the distractions that we've been bombarded ever since. I guess technology is wonderful, but it has also been kind of a villain in terms of where we've gotten right now. And so talking about all these distractions, we sometimes forget how to ground ourselves. Literally, our ancestors are able to walk on the ground bare feet. I don't know, growing up from the Philippines, because I mentioned I came from poverty stricken background, I have been actually trained to wear slippers all the time because my dad is going to be worried that I'm going to have bacteria on my feet. So if I walk barefoot, then it's not going to be beneficial for me. But come to think of it, this should not even be a challenge to be able to ground ourselves. And then, of course, I moved to Canada, where it's more natural compared to third world country. And yet, because in the city, it's almost impossible. The same thing, you can't be barefoot because you can get bacteria just from walking without, proper shoes or sandals. So these are just some simple things. But I think bottom line, to answer your question, is we've lost touch with what's natural.
Yeah, and especially as you're saying with technology too, has really distanced us from not only from ourselves, but from one another and from the earth. So I've often found too, in my research, that even some of the solutions, for within our industry or within our movement also seem to be divorced from nature themselves. It's looking at it like, well, we've got to fix this thing that's over there so that we can continue with a business as usual approach, and so this reconnection into the earth and the living systems of the earth, I feel, is that's where the cutting edge really is and where the greatest teachings, need to come from at this time.
Yeah, it's coming back to what was. And coming back is very challenging with all this, I guess, newness of what has brought, I guess, birth after all these natural things has been ignored. So I'll just give a very simple example. On my way back home, I normally pick up my son at 2:30 from school. And I mentioned about technology. I get to listen to a lot of wonderful wisdom on podcasts, right? And I'm really happy about this technology because we cannot reach other people before. But now it's so easy to just actually, send a message on social media and voila, you have this connection that's happening. But also at the same time, it's given us, I think, an excuse to always be on our head. And I can say this based on my experience, we're always on. So always on means, like what I mentioned, I'm driving and yet I'm not driving. My attention is on listening. My attention
That's
is in,
right. That's
I'm
right.
thinking of other things. And
Yeah.
so on my way here, I'm just sharing this because it got me to realize one thing, and I'm going to share that after I share the story. I'm like, do I listen to something that's gonna make me stimulated brain wise, meaning
Yeah.
more on my head, like there's more space that my brain can accumulate, or do I listen to something where, and I make my voice here a little bit lower just to bring the point of something where I can feel.
Yeah.
So I decided that I don't know if you know Susan David, but he's the author of Emotional Agility. So I started to listen where she was talking about how to create space by speaking truth.
Yeah.
And her modality is really about, we've forgotten sometimes to feel.
Yeah.
And feeling sometimes a not so positive emotion has been shunned by society.
Absolutely.
And we're talking here about environment, about nature. And if we're not just making that beautiful, that whole array of emotions of our humanity, that it's okay to be, in grief, that it's okay
Absolutely.
to be in pain, and not judge those, it'll be a better world, I guess. Not false. She calls it false positivity.
Yeah.
And you always have this choice in any given moment to go back to that.
Well, I find too, even just on that subject of grief or allowing yourself to feel is a huge step into reconnecting with yourself and how you really feel. But in developing that or allowing that more so actually will connect us into the natural world. And I think sometimes we don't want to be connected to it because it's a really overwhelming thing with the things that are happening right now. But if we could feel those, and it kind of leads me into the next question in many ways, because I think people can be so overwhelmed, with the dire news. And of course, the news is usually very sensationalistic and it is dire, chasing the headlines and so on. And I know that there are people that are, they're using cold water in the wash and they're buying the electric cars and they are recycling. But there's that sense of, is anything really happening? Is any of this making a difference? Because the news is so dire. And then there's the overwhelm around, well, what can we do? What should we do? And rather than having this sort of list of, these are the 10 steps, I feel like what you were saying, that if we're able to feel on these other levels, then we're going to feel what's happening with the oceans. We're going to feel what's happening with the land, or in the midst of this sixth mass extinction, we're going to feel it. And in feeling that on such a raw level, when you have that inspires the action.
Absolutely.
So how do you feel about that? Or do you feel that everything that, because you've been, I guess, officially maybe within the movement longer than I have. I've been involved in it, but in terms of running a business, do you, with all the podcasts you're listening to, do you feel all these collective steps are making a difference? And what can people do?
It's amazing that you asked that question, because it again brought me back to the word connection.
Yeah.
If we're connected to ourselves, it's more probable that we'll probably be connected and aware of what's going on around us. And I mentioned about the wonders of technology. Like I mentioned, having to listen to experts and wise people who's gone before us. But in the context of business, it's also the same true in terms of, and I remember, I don't know, I think I did tell you about my 3 pillars of sustainability that I recently just dubbed as ship method. Not a funny, sexy name, but leadership, partnership, and stewardship. And to me, leadership is defined as, you do the right thing even though no one's watching. And in the movement, come to think of it for a moment, wherein there's no camp A, those who are very environmentally aware, and there's camp B, who is like really trashing the environment. What if these two come together, and I call it an emergent, and really actually focus towards what's good, not actually fighting each other. It's like, you're bad, you're wrong, someone's right, someone has to pay the price, and we are paying the price. But it doesn't help to have two camps. So if we create an emergent wherein we put our heads together and actually say, you know, you believe that's your practice, we believe this is this practice. What can we do together? Act together in the context of we're one, you know, because I feel sometimes that in the business context, when people get too much attachment in terms of their belief, like, I'm going to save the world, and therefore those who are not saving the world are bad people. Help us either, because then the energy that we're putting out is very much, what's the word I'm wanting to say? Very much in terms of not connected, because then there's that other part that's supposed to be wrong. And so it's not a holistic approach or integrative for that matter.
And I feel in many ways maybe all movements, but we say the environmental movement has really been plagued by the blaming and the shaming and the anger and the projection and the pointing of fingers. And, you know, if I even cast back to my own experience when I think, I don't know how old I was, but young, and we had just migrated to Canada from Australia. And at that time, the only work my father could get was in a timber mill. So this was in the 70s. And so, of course, you know, they're cutting down the trees and then turning them into plywood and so on. And the movement, of course, at that time was not anywhere near what it is today. But if anyone had come to him, and maybe to all the other people that were employed there at the time, with blaming and shaming and telling them to get away from those jobs. At the time that we were going through that, there was also a deep recession. And, you know, he was struggling to pay the mortgage at that time. And my father is a very, very deep feeling, well-intentioned human being. But at that time, you know, like if it had been like fast forwarded to now, and the people that are still within these industries, and they, you know, they've got mortgages, they've got kids they're trying to put through school, or they could be in countries where they actually need carbon at the moment, or seem to need carbon. They're not going to transition anytime soon because they're in deep poverty. My sense is that it provides an awareness, like a wake-up call, like a shock therapy. But I feel too, from a holistic point of view, or a map of consciousness or law of attraction, the movement needs to also move on from there. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, when you mentioned the word blame, I used to have a friend, and I think he learned this from some of the gurus, that if someone blames, complain, or justify, that means they're broke.
And powerlessness.
Exactly. And so thing in the, you know, sustainability movement, if someone's not taking responsibility and blaming, complaining, and justifying, that's why the earth is broken. And so if we just even come from that simple concept of, okay, if I'm aware that I'm blaming right now, if I'm aware that I'm complaining right now, or if I'm aware that I'm justifying, that means I'm part of this brokenness of what's happening on Mother Earth.
I guess ultimately it's not the creative space that is digging into our ingenuity as human beings, and in that sense it keeps the media also trapped on that, you know, sort of fear-based level, as opposed to, or with, the understanding that there are so many innovators and inventors and groups and movements that are, it's the NGOs and it's the indigenous peoples and women's groups at so many levels that are contributing to this mass change. And I do wonder how it would shift things into another pathway, that, for people that also are wanting to know, well, what do I do? If more of that was available, then people would have that sense of hope, because the rest of it, I think, moves people into a sense of despair. I'm recycling this and I'm doing that, and it's still pointless, and I think it works against the movement.
Exactly. But yeah. I'm not saying, I'm glad that you clarified that, because I'm not saying that,
it has its place.
Exactly. So I think if each one of us, and I don't know now what's the global population of the world is, but if each one of us just do one tiny small thing every day, I don't know how much big that impact is going to get.
Huge. Yeah.
And so again, coming from a point of, I'm into this, I share this with some of the interviews that I've done, and I share this, that in the last 2 months now, I'm on my 3rd month, a fashion detox. I'm in North America, where everything is so easy to get that I sometimes lose track of, I don't really need that, but because it's so accessible, I want to get it. And so
just click that, done.
I remember watching a comedian saying, even in the United States now, I click Amazon, it's right there on my front door, right off the bed.
Wow.
Now.
Yeah.
Not even the drone. And it says 1-day delivery. What 1-day delivery? No, it has to be here.
I want it done in 4 hours. Yeah.
No, 4 hours is late. Now, the now mentality. Exactly. But kidding aside, though, that I think will make a bigger impact if we just be aware that we all have a part in it.
Yeah.
And it's not, oh, I'm doing this, and this, and you're not doing that, and so therefore you're not helping. I think the pointing of finger to those people not helping is also part of the problem.
Yeah. And just the overall narrative on that, from that media point of view, is keeping people, there's an awareness, but it's also keeping people powerless. I wondered about your thoughts too on, the upcoming COP26 in Glasgow, in the face of the latest IPCC, the 6th assessment. And okay, it's great. We know that if we reduce carbon, then we can turn this around quite quickly. We're not necessarily going to stop sea levels from rising, but we can turn it around. And I wondered too, whether maybe part of that, well, I guess 2 questions. Do you feel that, COP26, or we've just had this UN Biodiversity Summit, there's been no coverage of that in the media. Do you think that they're useful? Or is that also, is that really a part of moving away from expecting governments and corporations in the old style from fixing things? Does it really, is that just, there's that, and is the greater change really coming from you and I and the, NGOs and the micropreneurs? How do you see that?
That's a very good question, Fatima, because one of the things that I am very aware of right now is all this lingo, right?
Yeah.
So you just mentioned a bunch of acronyms there. And it's very technical in terms of what have we gotten into in terms of complexity. And I go back again, I talked about ancestors before. I mean, before they don't probably have a written contract. They just agree on something and then let's go do it. I think what ended up happening with the complexity that's happened is all these talks, all this, I guess, movement, all kinds of things, which are not bad at all. I'm not saying they're bad, but I believe that it's now time to actually take action. I think the time of the conversation around it has to a certain point need a deadline.
Yeah.
And so talking about when I talk to people, I say, I learned very early on in my career, 2 topics you don't want to thread when you're talking with people: politics and religion, because that's going to go nowhere. And so my take on this question is, remember that as an individual, as a human being, we all have a say in this. So it's not leaders who are just leaders. We are leaders in our own way. Going back again to the first pillar of sustainability I mentioned, if you do what's right, even though no one's watching, let's put the responsibility here, not to the people talking about COP26, not even the politicians running the government. I mean, they have a role to play. But what if we put the responsibility here? Just here. Starting, now, what can I do right now to be able to say that I have been part of the movement where I am proud that every time I come into some obstacle, that I'm thinking of a nature-based solution, something that is not going to harm anybody. Anybody meaning neighbor, another human being, the planet. And so start from there. And going back to, let's simplify. I remember one coach of mine say, to multiply, we have to simplify. And that is, I think, very important.
Well, I feel too, in terms of the shift of paradigms that we're in now, which has really been that hierarchical, top down, and the authorities, whether they're political ones or religious ones or, tech ones, medical ones, that the answers are coming, from the top down. And, our ideologies, so many of them are built on, the authorities and everybody else being powerless, and our entire economic systems, have resulted, and environmentally, these are the kinds of results that we have of that, extractivist paradigm as well, where we're going to take and make and waste in this sort of commodity reality. But I feel that the shift really now, as you're saying, is really coming into what we're feeling, what we're connecting into, first of all, ourselves, and then to the world around us, and to what we can feel is out of balance. But it's simpler in the sense that, well, we want clean water to drink or to swim in. We want clean air. We want healthy food. So we can really start right here and now, exactly where we live, to address that. And if it becomes bigger than that in terms of a business or community initiatives, well, then that's a great thing. But it's within us right now. We don't have to wake up with this list of how we're going to change the world and build this giant system, new business, and hopefully get the X prize or whatever it is.
That's good too. That's very good.
Yeah, let's do that. But
if there's just one thing, I guess, coming to a practical level, because as you know, my background, when you introduced me, I have a very logical background.
Absolutely,
so if I just have to be, I talked here more about the right brain of things. I call it sustainability directorship, from the inside out. But if they wanted to go to the nitty gritty of practicality and lingo, sustainability, I mean, reduce your carbon footprint as much as you can. And what does that look like for you? I'm here in Canada, and reducing carbon footprint may mean I should have lesser heat in my home. What if it's minus 40 degrees? It's not. Some of sustainability efforts, sometimes it's too general. And so again, going back to, how can you make that personal? How can you make that your own definition of making it a bigger, a small part, but as a part of a whole? So reduce your carbon footprint. How can you contribute to the climate change? Go walk barefoot and dance. And so all this, I guess, in the bigger scheme of things, if we And I don't want to just say, let's go sing Kumbaya,
Yeah.
because there's that part
We got to
again,
act. Yeah.
the action part. So going back again to the logical and practical side of my brain, it's like, a vision
Yeah.
is an imagination, a dream without action, without
Yeah.
structure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it has to have an emergent that together,
Yeah.
that it should work together.
Well, let me put this to you so that if all these crises, and we can just.
Oh, I think I lost you there.
Oh, can you hear me?
Okay,
am I
now
back? Yeah.
Okay.
So if we tick the boxes on all the crises that are happening, and let's say it's the environmental crises, just to narrow it down, and if we just say they're not happening to us, and they're not because of us, even though we are deeply intrinsically connected to a lot of the outcomes, but if it's happening for us, if it's an opportunity, and so how would you answer that? If it's happening for us, what are the inherent opportunities, and what's your vision?
I love that. If it's happening for us,
Yeah,
without us knowing that there's actually this grand master plan.
Yeah.
Grand master plan
and we're on time with it at the 11th hour or whatever.
And
yeah,
I used this word today. I don't know if you watched the movie with Keanu Reeves, On the Earth the Day Stood Still, where this is all happening, wherein he's an alien coming from a different planet, and all this massive distraction happening on the environment, on the political structure, what have you. And in that chaotic stance, he mentioned something about in the precipice of change, people will move in a direction wherein it's supposed to serve them all.
Yeah.
There's no
love that.
No A, there's B, but it is all part of this grand plan.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, coming into the intelligence of this living system, that it's precipitating, and we're on the precipice of that change, or the threshold. And it's kind of like we don't move because we feel like it, we move because we have to, and all the circumstances are supporting us to make that leap. Yeah.
I have a 12-year-old, and I must say that since the pandemic happened, we watch a lot of TV shows, and as much as we can, we have him watch. There's 3 generations in my family. So my husband is older than I am. So his generation, I don't know, generation before X, and I'm generation X. My son is generation Y and Z. And so as much as we can, we try to combine all these 3. So we've watched some films from a long time ago, really old. He watched My Fair Lady, believe it or not. But if you just watch even the movies from before, and all of the things, some of the scenes that they are showing in there, you would not have thought that this would happen. Like, who would have thought we can communicate? You're in Australia, I'm in Canada, and here we are.
Yeah.
We're together in one room. This has been like forecasted from before. So in a way, we shouldn't even be shocked that all these things are happening. But still, we watched the whole series of Stargate. And if you watch that series, it's all this like masterful imagination that thought won't happen. And we're getting there. There's probably going to be aliens sitting right now in another planet. Next decade, we'll probably be talking to them.
Absolutely. Well, we're coming to the end here. Do you have a final message for our audience? If you could just say one thing, what would you communicate? I
would like to just say that give yourself space. And when I say that, space to feel, space to connect. And that's the first 2 stepping stone to being stewards. Because once you're connected and you have space for yourself, space for another, then it should be automatic formula to be
guided by that. And finally, how can people reach you?
My website is whentheship hits the fan.com. And so you can contact me there. I'm also on LinkedIn and all other social media. So it's very easy. I have podcasts in our industry, the Business of Aquaculture podcast. And so get in touch.
Well, thank you so much, Lourdes. It's really been a great pleasure to have you on the Earth Speaks podcast. I wish you well with everything that's unfolding and everything that you're creating and connecting right now.
I am so happy that we are connected, Fatima.
Yeah, me
From
too.
one sister soul to another.
Absolutely. Thank you.